Good morning all, grand rising to you all. Welcome to Wake Up. How are you all? I'm Sonia Poulton, journalist, broadcaster, all-round troublemaker, and so much the better for it. How are you on this Monday morning? We have entered November. Yes, indeed we have. It's Monday, the 3rd of November, 9 a.m. GMT. And how are you all? I hope you are well. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. Welcome to the show that knows the UK is being riled into civil war by people who have nothing to do with our nation and aided by people claiming to be guardians and patriots of our nation. Anyone calling for a civil war is on the side of the enemy. Don't forget that. They want us to riot because a whole raft of totalitarian measures will be implemented as a consequence. It's important as we enter this new week to know thy enemy. Oh, yes, indeed. How are you all in the comments? Wake up. Armand, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? You beautiful people. To Lisa and Kaz and Aurora and Marco and Stephen and Randy and Colders and Jeannie and Colin and Bumblebeat and Sandy and Synchronized Soul, you name it, to Kath, to you all, to Swiss Miss. How are you, Swiss Miss? Always such a wonderful, generous soul. Thank you. I appreciate you greatly. And hopefully I'll be able to tackle an email that you sent in a little while ago. So what is on today's show? We will be joined by former Royal Navy radio operator during the Falklands War, Paul Cardin, who will be joining us to talk about the fraud that is the man formerly known as Prince Andrew. And also former lawyer Clare Wills Harrison will be talking to us about digital ID, about dynamic pricing, about controlled opposition, you name it. She'll be here to talk to us about it. And I will be talking to 3 content creators, Jan's Views, Duncan Smith and Wax Unfiltered, to join me to discuss the Channel 4 demonization of commentators in the Jay Slater case. Now, quite an interesting response thus far to these content creators coming on. Haunted for Echo wrote, why only have people who believe foul play in the Jay Slater case on, only telling their side of things? Now, here's the thing, Haunted for Echo, they are not coming on to discuss their theories about Jay Slater. They are coming on to discuss the demonization of content creators, of which 2 of them will be with us today. And that is important. This is not a debate about the Jay Slater case as such, but about a national broadcaster targeting content creators. If it was about Jay Slater theories, I would include other people, absolutely. Nonetheless, as I've seen, this is a controversial topic, but I have never shied away from tackling something just because it splits opinion. We must be able to talk without people being doxxed or their employers being contacted, any of that stuff. We like free speech around here, but we don't do obsessive repeating of messages. Play nice or you will be put out. Just because you have a beef with someone doesn't mean I do, okay? And I see that there is one individual in the comments, and happy to have you here. You are also the same individual who sent me a raft of emails yesterday, of which I only could read one screenshot. All the rest were not available, illegible, not so. But the bottom line is this: I'm not going to remove a content creator just because somebody asked me to. That's not how it works around here. Okay. I like to try and give a platform to as many voices as possible, whether that is for or against. So as I say, play nice, be decent. Okay. Do not come into our comments just to rile everybody up. And our regular live chatters, you know what to do. If people annoy you, just block them, right? Just block them. Right. What else is on today's show? Provocation and agitation, the forcing of civil war in the UK. And I don't like it. Plus, what's in Parliament and the Lords this week? Hillsborough Law, Assisted Dying Committee, and the return of, well, just horrendous people, George Osborne and Vince Cable. Plus, US, the cutting of government assistance. It's as if they want people to riot on both sides of the Atlantic, plus all the usual good stuff around here. Your say, news this week, and we will end with remember where you come from. And what else to say other than we do news different around here. And you know why? Because someone had to. Thank you for being here. On this day in history, the 3rd of November, Henry VIII, a man riddled with all manner of disease and by all accounts an utterly foul individual. But the English Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, making Henry VIII and all subsequent monarchs the head of the Church of England, replacing the authority of the Pope. This was driven by Henry's desire for a divorce, from Catherine of Aragon, and he wanted to obviously remarry Anne Boleyn. It was extremely significant, remains significant, because it gave the crown power over the church's finances and assets and made denying the king's supremacy a treasonous act. What about if you say the king has a penchant for surrounding himself with pedos? Is that a treasonous act? Who cares? I said it. Oh, yes, indeed. Plus, on this day in history, in 1956, the 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz, was televised for the first time. It was delayed for well over a decade, and it was eventually televised on CBS TV. How are you all, you beautiful people? How are you all? When I say delayed, it had a cinema release, but it took a long time to come to TV. I hope you are all well today. I truly do. And yes, how are you, people? You beautiful people. Yes. Yeah, and Charles managed to bypass it, right? Got you. Right, absolutely. What's happening in Parliament this week? Well, Epstein ain't going away, peeps. He ain't going away. There will be a committee that will be hearing from senior officials about Lord Peter Mandelson's appointment as the US ambassador. Peter Mandelson and the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, you couldn't really get a cigarette paper between them and who was closest to Jeffrey Epstein, right? And so that will be a committee hearing, plus pushers of austerity. George Osborne and Vince Cable will be returning to Parliament to contribute to a committee on the budget. I could scream. This is like a bad deja vu. Those two were very responsible for pushing ideological austerity, and I wouldn't trust any of them around vulnerable people, sick and disabled people, because they didn't give a flying fig about them then. And to bring them back now to talk about the budget is really alarming. It suggests that that's where Reeves and co. It's all the same thing, isn't it? It's just a continuation. It's just a continuation. None of these people ultimately think up these policies. They are just the people who will push it through. Simple stuff. Plus, the Lords Assisted Dying Committee will hear from the Health Minister and Chief Medical Officer, and the Commons will debate the Hillsborough Law as well as the Employment Rights and Public Authorities bills. The Hillsborough Law, we talked about this recently and on a number of occasions, including in my Freemason report regarding the Hillsborough disaster. And we had Will, Dad, on recently talking about his son, Robbie, who was essentially murdered by the NHS, or left to die, shall we say, let to die. And Will was talking about it and how an element of the Hillsborough Law absolutely applies to what happened to Robbie, and that is the duty of candour. And hopefully Robbie's name will be mentioned in the debate this week. And the duty of candour is the placing of legal duties of candour on public servants and officials, requiring them to assist inquiries, inquests and other investigations candidly, promptly and proactively with full disclosure. Why we would need a law for people to do that is extraordinary, but that tells you people have been hiding for a very long time. This is why whistleblowers have so much problems, right? It's because as soon as they whistleblow, they are found to be some sort of problem to the organization. They are targeted. They often lose their jobs, and it's really bad stuff. But the Hillsborough Law will also cover misconduct in public office, which replaces the common law offence of misconduct in public office with 2 new statutory offences, plus ethical conduct, which places a duty on public authorities to promote and maintain ethical conduct, including by producing a code of ethics. It's 2025. Why is this only just happening? This tells you how bad everything has been for a very long period of time. We are in an anti-truth society. Yes, indeed, we are. We're in an anti-truth society, and it's time we got away from it. And I'm sure none of you have missed what's been happening in the UK this weekend. An LNER train from Doncaster, stabbings on the train, 11 people treated in hospital, and 5 have now been discharged. 2 were dealing with life-threatening conditions. And British Transport Police received reports of multiple stabbings on the train at 7:42 p.m. on Saturday, before officers raced to the scene in Huntingdon in a period of 8 minutes. A 32-year-old black male and a 35-year-old black male of Caribbean descent were arrested by Cambridgeshire Police. And officers have also said there was nothing to suggest this is a terrorist incident. The 32-year-old man who was arrested is now being treated as the only suspect. The 35-year-old man, it appeared, got caught up in it. They said it was a good faith report, but he's innocent, and he was released with no further action. So it comes down to, at this moment in time, a 32-year-old man who was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and remains in police custody. He is from Peterborough, and it is known that he boarded the train at Peterborough station. A knife was recovered by officers at the scene, and this is the officers piling in on one of the men. Now, here's the thing, really important for people to understand. A lot of people saying false flag, and could well be, because they are so desperate to get through digital ID, although we already have it, as Claire Wills Harrison will explain. But they're so desperate to get through the more kind of totalitarian, draconian elements of it that they will use anything. But nonetheless, we have to be really careful, because we do have extremists in our midst. And the extremists I'm also talking about are not just the psychos out there on the street causing chaos, but psychos who are trying to wind up the British people. And I include people like MP Rupert Lowe, like commentator, what is his name? Matt Goodwin, iffy as heck. Once had some of his work taken up by the Fabian Society, but presents as if he's on the far right these days rather than the far left. Which is he? Seems he can be both, people. Rupert Lowe immediately wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying that this stabbing, this attack was a consequence of mass uncontrolled immigration. Sit down, Rupert. I've been around the block so many times now that I've seen the Rupert Lowes all over. They come, they make a lot of money, they make a lot of noise, and then they off again. That's what they do, right? Now, jumping to conclusions about something that's just happened means that it just fits your worldview. Rupert wants everything to be the responsibility of Muslims. Muslims, this is their fault. We need to sit down. We need to slow down, because these people are taking us into a civil war. They are dangerous. They are very dangerous people indeed. And in that, I include people like Elon Musk and Gad Saad. They want us to fight each other and to leave the billionaire parasites alone. That is exactly what they want to do. Elon Musk is actually saying we are now in the midst of civil war. And goes on to also say that civil war in Britain is inevitable. Elon Musk, let's be frank here, right? Ostracized from your own country. And so what you do is you use all your money to rabble rouse around everybody else's country. You essentially ejected from American politics. But because some of the far right in the UK are desperate for your moolah, they'll cozy up to you. And Elon wants us all, he says, to align with Tommy Robinson. The man who goes to Israel on a jolly, allows a filthy Zio to badmouth our entire nation. But still, it's Israel first. And Elon Musk wants us to align with Tommy Robinson. For a while, I started to understand Tommy Robinson's position. But in recent months, he's made absolutely clear it's Israel first. These people are not patriots. Well, not to the UK anyway. Absolutely not. And Elon Musk is a real problem. These people want us to fight each other, rather than look up at what they're doing. The billionaire class, the parasite class, they're parasites. And it's not good. And Shug said, extremists on either side are fleecing us. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, they are. Patrick Christie at GB News is horrible. Everything that comes out of his mouth is all the same stuff. These people are boring. Boring. Good luck to Graham Moore this week. Graham Moore has been on with us before. He won against Sarah Pochin's appeal. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's another idiot. And the petition court is happening in Chester today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Well done, Graham. He's essentially showing that there was election petition fraud and postal voting fraud around his campaign. So I'm sure he will join us sooner rather than later to talk more about it. Old Dog said, if you don't think we are heading for a civil war, you're delusional. Here's the thing, Old Dog. The people who are saying this largely are anonymous. You're anonymous. I would love to see your identity. You know, talk to me like a real person, not hiding behind anonymity and telling us we've got a civil war coming. Because here's the thing, is what they talk about on X, primarily on X, the most racist social media site, but primarily what they talk about on X is not happening for real. It's not. There's a lot of awful stuff out there and it needs to be tackled. And I myself have covered the issue of uncontrolled immigration. Absolutely. But two things can be right. And that is, there's a bunch of Zionist agitators who are winding up people in the UK. And we also have uncontrolled immigration. Two things can be right at the same time. And there you go. There you go. Welcome to our live chat where free speech is welcomed. Yes, it is. Let's bring in my first guest. My first guest is Paul Carden. I believe he's with us. Paul, can I see you on the screen? I can. Here he is. Yes. Paul Carden. Good morning to you.
Sonia.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Good. Good to have you with us, Paul. You are, of course, well, you're many things. I mean, these days you are a business owner, but you are also formerly a radio operator in the Royal Navy, and you are somebody who regularly comments in the live chat. You're a supporter of Wake Up, and I very much appreciate that. And you wrote to me at the end of last week, and you were talking about Prince Andrew, and obviously it's the stripping of the titles of Prince Andrew that kind of started, and all this is in the kind of backlash following Virginia Giuffre's book about the further leaking of Epstein emails, which actually shows that Andrew was seriously involved with him. And so obviously Charles and William and Kate, they're very, very keen to keep their position because they're desperate to keep the royal family rolling on. And so what they're essentially doing is this public cutting loose of Andrew, even though they're moving him from one mansion to the next and still going to give him loads of money. But I think the most important thing at this moment in time, and why you contacted me, is because they removed his title Prince, and he is now going to be known formally as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And you said he should get rid of Mountbatten for a start. Paul, take it away. Tell us more.
Okay, Sonia, thanks for that. I really think it's time for Prince Andrew to start being honest with himself, because that's the place where you start if you're going to put a good image out to the world, and start making a sort of clean breast of things. And the reason I contacted you, Sonia, is there was something which happened a long time ago, back 43 years ago, during the Falklands. I was on HMS Yarmouth down there, and while the war was going on, we used to get helicopters would come and land and with our mail, and they'd hover above the flight deck and drop a bag with our mail in it, and we were all running to get our mail. But also we used to get newspapers, quite recent newspapers that were published at the time, and we got a copy of the Daily Mail, and the front page. Oh, sorry, you've got the Daily Express up there.
The Daily Express. The Daily Mail wasn't a very good, clear image, but this one is good. This one's good. Andrew, my wall, I was decoyed for an Exocet. I was told to hit the deck. Is that true, Paul?
No, it's not true. It's not true. What they're referring to is an incident on the 30th of May, 1982. And what happened then, this was the Argentinians' final air-launched Exocet attack against the British fleet, 30th of May. And what we have is a sort of carrier battle group, and that's the Invincible, which Andrew was on. And then around that, we have other ships. And the Invincible always stayed away to the east. It was the furthest ship, which is obvious. And then the other ships, HMS Avenger and HMS Exeter, were further to the west. And this Super-Étendard plane came flying in, released one or two missiles, and then that was from 20 miles distance. And HMS Avenger claims to have shot it down. Okay? And then there's another, that was sort of, people are not sure about that. They claim to have shot it down with their 4.5-inch guns. Another claim is that a ship put a cloud of chaff up. Now, chaff is sort of very fine silver, aluminium foil. It's fired up in a shell or a mortar. That explodes, and there's a load of metal in the air, and that gives a sort of radar echo. So any missile coming in towards the ships will see the ship echo, and we'll see the chaff, which is mimicking a ship, and it confuses the missile, and it'll either go for the chaff, or it'll get confused, or it'll land in the sea. So you're just upping your chances by firing that stuff up in the air. So on that day, the missile came flying in. HMS Invincible was 25 miles to the east of HMS Avenger. So what's happened here is that the newspaper editors or the owners have got onto this and decided to sensationalize the whole story and make out. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so let me just be clear here, right? Because we don't have a great deal of time. Let me just be clear here. What you're saying is the idea that Andrew was some sort of naval hero is a lie. It's fraudulent. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
It is, because the man in the street picking up that newspaper would think, wow, Prince Andrew has just saved the lives of 1,000 crew on HMS Invincible by decoying that Exocet. That's what it said. Andrew decoys. The Daily Mail headline was very direct, and it said, Andrew decoys Exocet missile. And when we got that newspaper on our ship, I'm not joking, we fell about 20 of us, fell about laughing. Honest to God.
Same stuff, isn't it? It's same stuff. They're talking about stripping him of his medals. So do you think it's about time?
I don't think he should lose his Falklands medal, because I'm not here to totally lambast Prince Andrew. On the 25th of May, which was 5 days earlier, the Argentinians launched an Exocet attack, air-launched, and this time they got a big radar contact and it hit the Atlantic conveyor. Now, the Invincible was about 10, 20 miles away, and Prince Andrew was a co-pilot of a Sea King helicopter, and he and his pilot flew to the ship and started picking up survivors from the sea or from the life rafts. You know, some of those men were in life rafts for 4 hours. You know, it was like the cruel sea. They were thinking, Christ, is anyone ever going to pick us up? Right. And some of them, 26 of them, got picked up by Prince Andrew's helicopter. So all credit to him. I don't think he should lose his Falklands medal.
Now, I find that interesting, because you're like completely anti-establishment, and yet you're able to acknowledge that. And I think that's good. I think that's refreshing. It's not all out, you know, destroy, that you can acknowledge that he did something. And you catalogue, obviously, your experience in the Falklands in the Return to Bomb Alley 1982, don't you?
Yeah.
And so, but in general, in terms of Prince Andrew, so you don't think he should be stripped of his Falklands awards?
No.
What do you think would happen to him at this stage, given everything that's come out?
I think it's the ball is in his court, I'd say. And like I said earlier, he needs to sort of grow up, you know, be honest with himself about everything, about the child abuse. And I think this extends to the royal family as well, with King Charles. You know, the same message goes to him. You know, with the Savile connection, be open about it. You know, the man in the street is looking at you, looking up to you, and expecting some honesty. You know,
who's expecting honesty from royal family, Paul?
I'd say all of us.
Really?
Yeah, because all of us. I mean, we all know the connections to Bishop Peter Ball. You know, Savile, all that sort of thing. So. Is it right to expect honesty from them, do you think?
I've way long past expecting honesty from that.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that to expect we're going to get any honesty from them is to continue to delude ourselves, because it's not an honest enterprise to start off with, right? So that's the problem. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the government were consulted before his titles were stripped away from him. I didn't realize that was protocol. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. The government seemed to be taking their lead from royalty. I'm not sure if that's right. Should they be doing that?
Yes, indeed. And the thing is that the government and royalty are currently trying to work out what to do with their joint Epstein problem, obviously, because royalty, Epstein's all over royalty. Epstein is all over politics. Peter Mandelson committee hearing this week. So I don't ultimately know what's going to happen. But I mean, me personally, as a taxpayer, I feel really aggrieved that we have been funding these people, and everybody knows that about me. But I certainly don't see why we should be funding people like Prince Andrew or Sarah Ferguson or their daughters, even though their daughters have retained their titles. Would you abolish the monarchy, Paul?
I would, in a heartbeat. I would, yeah. I've always felt that. Even when I was down in the Falklands War, I would have abolished the monarchy.
Right.
You know, their influence is it's tremendous. I mean, people picking up that newspaper, you know, with the headline, Andrew decoys Exocet missile, they'll put the paper down, they'll walk off, and they'll vote Tory. You know, that's the kind of influence that dishonesty has.
Propaganda. Yeah, it is, absolutely. But your book, you wrote it yourself, very much about your reflections of what took place. And you are very kindly giving away a signed copy to one of our viewers. The usual deal, people, and that is send to Sonia Poulton at sky.com, and it will close at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, and the first one randomly selected will receive a copy of Paul's book, Return to Bomb Alley. So at the moment, Paul, we're hearing that there are 2 Scotland Yard inquiries regarding Andrew. One is essentially a scoping exercise, which is sort of an inquiry before an official investigation. The second one, I think, is probably more serious, because it's the whole idea that Andrew tried to get his publicly funded police protection officers to dig up dirt on Virginia Giuffre. What are your thoughts about the Giuffre revelations that have been coming out?
Yeah, it's so sad that she took her own life. It really is, you know. I saw what you did about her book. You know, that was amazing to watch that.
Thank you.
And I think they still deserve justice. Her family, they still deserve that.
Yeah, it's not enough, is it, just to strip people of titles? You do need to have police investigations if it seems that a criminal line has been passed. Paul, before you leave us,
do their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, before you leave us today, anything else that you'd like to add about Prince Andrew and his naval days?
Yes, the only other thing I'd like to say is that he's had 4 decades in which to correct the newspapers, to say, look, guys, you know, let's be honest about what I did down there. I was no Exocet missile came near us. You know, he did speak to a Ministry of Defence magazine with a low circulation quite a few years ago, stating that he never even saw an Exocet missile. But that was read by a few thousand people.
Right.
He contacted the Express and the Mail and updated their readers. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big difference, isn't it? That's the big difference, because when it's on the front page of a newspaper, obviously, even if millions aren't buying it anymore, it's there, it's in the newsstands, people see the headline. So yeah, it has a knock-on effect, but that's how propaganda works.
Yes,
right?
I'm going to be contacting IPSO, the so-called press regulator, and seeing if they can contact the Daily Mail and the Express and to get them to publish a correction, even though it's 43 years.
It's a long time after the event. I'd be very surprised if they would get involved now.
Well, I'll go for it.
Yeah, it's worth a shot, isn't it? Thank you for giving away a signed copy of Return to Bomb Alley 1982. Thank you for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Paul Carden, who was a former radio operator, naval radio operator, and is here to tell us that the Andrew story of his time in the Navy isn't all that it seems. Good to have you with us, Paul. Take good care of yourself.
Sonia.
Have a good week. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. And let me just see how I can wangle that off the screen. There you go. So Prince Andrew, obviously, titles lost immediately. He'll stay at this Royal Lodge until 2026. The loss of the titles came into effect immediately, and he's not. Andrew and his family are not expected to leave Royal Lodge until after Christmas, which means he will conveniently not be present when the royals gather at Sandringham for the holiday. They just can't have it. You see, Charles, William and Kate, it's all fine behind the scenes, but they cannot completely ostracize him, because here's the thing, Andrew knows where the bodies are hidden. He does. They all have to stay as tight as possible while looking as if they are appeasing the general public. And we will see. Charles is paying him off. Andrew has the full support of King Charles. And honestly, I've said it before, and I think it's worth saying again, and that is, if people are outraged about what we know about Andrew, why aren't people more outraged about the king, the actual king? The actual king, who not only surrounded himself with child abusers, but maintained relationships, even when it came out about at least one of them that he'd received a police caution. Anyway, pressure has intensified in Parliament for a parliamentary debate on Mountbatten Windsor's position, which is what Andrew is now called. And the Public Accounts Committee released a list of detailed questions they had sent to the Crown Estate about Andrew's 75-year lease on Royal Lodge. But there's so much to unpack really there, which we have unpacked a lot on Wake Up. And one of the things is about the income from the Crown Estate. We're being diddled, people. We are being diddled. And I don't know if anybody saw that statement. His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. Very formal press release statement that was released. I don't think Charles is going to be with us for much longer. And I think they are lining up the cards so everything is hunky-dory for William and Kate. And William and Kate are going to be living a couple of miles down the road from Royal Lodge. They don't want to be near Andrew. It's bad PR. They're not going to move into Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace, by this point, should be turned over completely to a visitors for visitors. And the income should go into, I mean, I'd abolish the Royals in a heartbeat, obviously, but the income from Buckingham Palace, it's only open for short periods of time throughout the year. It should be open 24/7, every room open and available to tourists. And the income goes into the public coffers because we've given so much to this family of parasites, frankly. I see them as nothing else but. Right. I want to welcome in my next guest. Let me just find, and I should say, of course, not everyone is happy that Andrew has been stripped of his titles. Former MP Harvey Proctor is not happy. Because he says that Andrew has not been proven guilty of anything. And I do take that point, but this is not about him being proved guilty about anything or not. It's about the royal family attempting to save face. Harvey Proctor has made much of being accused himself of heinous crimes. He's always denied the allegations, and the police investigated him and no charges followed. But yes, he's not happy about the stripping of Andrew's titles, but I am. So up yours, Harvey Proctor. Right, let me bring in Clare Wills Harrison, because she's not like Harvey Proctor or Prince Andrew at all. How are you, love? How are you,
Morning,
Clare?
Sonia. How are you?
I am great. Lovely to have you with us, Clare. Thank you for joining us this morning. Our absolute pleasure. And when I put on my Patreon that you were coming on, I had a rash of emails from people saying, yeah, we waited for Clare to come on. And I've even got one of my patrons wants to ask you a question, and you've written about it, you've talked about it, so I know it's something that you understand, but we just want some clarity on it, and you are the gal to do it for us. You're an ex-lawyer, but you are an absolute genius on the subject of digital ID. And one of the things that you said to me is this whole idea that digital ID is coming is, and to paraphrase you, is ridiculous because it's already here. Take it away, Clare. What about one login? Is that what you mean when you say it's already here?
I do, and I mean all of the bits and pieces that we use as well, obviously, passports, driving licenses, they're all biometric, all of your two-factor authentications for emails. But Gov1 login specifically is the UK's government's centralised digital identity platform, and it supports keyword interoperability. So that means at the back end, digital identities can be linked across public sector services and private companies. And of course, that is what the danger is. So government-backed digital ID could become the sole gateway to healthcare, banking, education, voting, and therefore if access is revoked or restricted, individuals will be locked out of society.
I mean, it really is that simple, isn't it? And as you pointed out to me yesterday, that's insecure. It's lost its safety certificate, right?
Yeah, lost it in May, still hasn't got it back, apparently being worked on. Really anyone that's signing up to one login, and this is happening kind of by stealth. We can talk about that, but you're opening yourself up to data hacks, having your information stolen, sold on the dark web, and therefore you're actually assisting criminals. The government are asking you to assist in crime being perpetrated.
Wow, it's quite mind-blowing, really, isn't it? And you've done so much work into this. I mean, it's really phenomenal, the work that you've done, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you, Claire, because your work is also very accessible. It's not full of management speak or academic talk. It's just like you go straight for it, and I love that. But one of the things, we had a brief chat yesterday, and one of the things that you said, and I thought about this last night, and that is, it's very hard not to go along with this, isn't it? Extremely hard.
Yeah, it's really difficult because we talked about yesterday when we had a brief tech check, because I'm not very techy, to make sure that I could work this morning. The disclosure barring service checks, which are the standard ones, a lot of people need them for jobs. You can now only access those through one login. And of course, once you're into the system and you've had to prove your identity through it at the back end, that information is in the eco structure, in the architecture for digital ID, and it's very hard to unwrap yourself from that. We've also got what we call nudging. Everybody probably knows about that. I'm sure all your viewers know what that is, where if you want to renew your driving license, you're nudged to go on to Gov1 login to do that. And actually, I think there's a real legal issue, because if you don't want to use that system or cannot use that system, you are charged more for using the postal system. So it's very, very unfair. You can still use the postal application system at the moment, but it is more expensive to do so. Now, by 2027, all government services, online services, will be mandatory through one login. There will be no way to use anything other than one login for online government services. Now, I mentioned the word online there because at the moment we've still got the postal options to renew your passport, to renew your driving license. Some things we haven't, like I said, the standard DBS check. However, I think we all know that the march is to try and remove those paper options so that you will be sequestered into this, one login system. And once your details have gone in there, as I've said, it's very, very difficult to undo it.
And as you've pointed out, this is not just like a government attack on us. This is coming from all angles, including corporations. And you pointed out to me Microsoft and Stripe as two examples. The verification is all part of the same thing, isn't it?
Well, this is a public-private initiative. Right. And I had a little look this morning because I wanted to just check one of the companies that are involved in this. And it's actually very confusing for people. So we've got Gov1 login as the system. And then linked to that, we have a private company called One ID. Now, they are certified to operate within this digital identity framework, certified under the trust framework, which means it meets government standards, which is meaningless given that One Login has lost its safety certificate. But One ID is actually, I'm just looking at this company and doing quite a deep dive on them. I've just started. They're the company that are continuously publishing recommendations for the UK government on how to strengthen digital public infrastructure, emphasising the interoperable part of it, which is the really worrying part of it. That's the centralisation of it, so it can be linked to everything. Now, One ID is pushing for a digital public infrastructure, and that is a concept that combines public-private governance. So your viewers need to know that public-private governance. You do not elect private companies, but they're going to be involved in your governance.
This is extraordinary stuff, which I think brings me to one of our viewer emails. Actually, I've got so many questions for you. So one of our viewer emails is from Neil. Good morning to you, Neil. He was thrilled to hear you were on. In fact, he started following your Substack after I'd mentioned you on a previous show, because I do every now and again, I quote you, Claire, because you're so quotable. And I know what you're talking about in terms of digital ID. Anyway, so what Neil says is, I just received the notification for Wake Up. Very much looking forward to your discussion with Claire Wills Harrison about digital ID. And he goes on to say that I was going to write to Claire for her views on one of the documents I've now attached for you. And it's about the Postal Act, still applying, right? But whether they have any sort of validity or credibility, I don't know. But Claire, with her legal background, may well know. Now, what he goes on to say is he's a director of his own personal services company. So the changes to Companies House rules from the 18th of this month are directly affecting him. But one of the things that he's concerned about is he wrote to his accountants and they came back and he's not entirely sure that they gave him the correct answer, because he says the email fails to declare an option to verify your identity by using an authorized corporate services provider. To him, this appears to be a glaring omission. Is everything I've just said making sense to you, Claire? Because this is all very new to me. Okay, go on.
So for company directors, there's currently 3 routes to verify your identity, all of which I object to, because if you're paying your taxes and filing your accounts, I'm not quite sure why you need to have your identity verified any further. But 3 ways are straight through one login and you do it yourself. You do a postal route, which you start on one login and then you go to the post office to finish it. Or you use what's called an ACSP, or an authorized corporate service provider. And these are companies that have gone through their own, some of them are accountants, others are, you can find them online. They've already gone through their own identification with one login to get certified as an ACSP. And what happens is you either do it online or you go in to see them with your identity documents and they will confirm your identity. Now, the issue with that is, although you're not having yourself a front end login to one login, the ACSP will take certain details from your identification and put it through their own system to Companies House. So they'll take your passport number, they'll put your name, address, date of birth, that kind of thing. So although it's the probably the most favorable option if you don't want your own front end one login, your details obviously are still going into the architecture. But yes, the ACSP route is an option for people.
And I think what he was disturbed about was that it turned out that he was the only client of this accountant's that had actually even raised an issue about it at all. And that's the thing, people are just going into it, aren't they? They're feeling that they have to. But Neil, much more savvy, is like, I don't want to do this. I am not prepared to do this at all. And so there is an alternative then to this. There is a way around this.
Kind of, like I said, from my point of view, I personally don't feel that I would do the verification process even through an ACSP. It depends. They operate differently. No 2 are the same. Some will do it by facial verification to verify you against your passport. And that's something that you want to be avoiding, because obviously that's a biometric style verification. As I say, I object to the notion that you have to do this, and that the only way that you can do this is by submitting either biometric data or going through one login. And in fact, it was the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act of 2023 that brought in these requirements under the last government. So everyone's complaining that it's a Labour thing. It's not, because there's no difference between policy between the 2. And it's actually a set of regulations that bring in, as we find now with all of these acts of parliament, they never specifically say how it's going to work. They're almost like framework pieces of legislation, which is then dealt with. As to the actual implementation, is always dealt with then by the executive through secondary legislation or regulations. And it's these regulations of 2025 that lay out the options as to how people need to verify their identity. The only good thing about that, of course, is that secondary legislation can be judicially reviewed under certain grounds, but within those regulations, there's no option for people to say, well, I'll just send you a certified copy of my passport, or I'll come up to Companies House to do that.
Right.
So, you know, it's all to make people be shepherded into this ecosystem that they're desperately trying to set up, this interoperable. back-end system, public-private system, which of course is linked to the globalist agenda 2030. It's a
Absolutely.
massive push and it's across the world.
Now that brings my next point. Neil, I hope that assists you in some way. This is not entirely my area, but I hope it does assist you in what Claire has said. And I know that you're now following a Substack. So that brings me to my next thing, of course, and that is one of the things that you've said, and you've just alluded to it. This is not emanating from Tony Blair. One of the reasons I personally talk about Tony Blair is simply because I remember the push that he had. He was the first sort of prime minister in my lifetime who was really pushing for something like this. But you're absolutely right. This is a global policy. And it really concerns you when groups, we're going to get round to that, but they want us to believe that this is all kind of coming from one person, one individual, one company, right? Because you're saying that these people can easily be replaced and the next person will just do it anyway. Pick that up, Claire.
Yeah, and I mean, Tony Blair is, of course, a globalist and not a very nice man. I don't have anything nice to say about Tony Blair. I'm sure you don't either. But there are 1,000 Tony Blairs that would step into his shoes if Tony Blair wasn't around. And people obviously need to be aware that this is an agenda that, if you go and look at the UN Agenda 2030 and their sustainable development goals, it's all contained in there. Yes, they have their mouthpieces like Tony Blair, like Bill Gates, like whoever else that will, I don't know why they pick the most undesirable people to try and sell these policies, but they do. So it isn't just the Tony Blair Institute or Tony Blair or Labour or the Tories. It's across the board, and this is something that's really hard for people to accept, but accept it we need to, and that is that our government does not work for us, whoever is in power, whoever gets elected. They follow these agendas, particularly Agenda 2030, and there are lots of obviously transnational globalist groups that try to push these things through, and often they look like they've got different ideologies, and in fact they're all the bloody same.
Right, exactly. And we have to be careful, of course, and again we talked briefly yesterday about what had happened in Huntingdon, and I think you made a brilliant point yesterday, and that is obviously a lot of people often get divided between this is a false flag, this is not really happening, this is about pushing through an agenda. But you said actually it doesn't matter whether it's real or false at all. What matters about it, Claire?
It matters how it is framed and used to push forward the next policy that they want to implement. And that can be proved if you go and look. Only yesterday we started then having articles, and in fact a couple of days before we'd had one in the Telegraph. Is it time to call a national emergency? Is it time to call a national emergency? And of course this whole migrant issue that has blown up has been blown up for that purpose. And what people need to understand is when you get to the level of national emergency, that means emergency legislation.
Yes,
that means the Civil Contingencies Act potentially. That means bringing in mandatory digital ID under emergency legislation, or lots of other things. If you go, I did a big article on the Civil Contingencies Act on my Substack, and it's a really awful piece of legislation that is so wide-ranging in what it can do. And you only need to think back to 2020 and emergency legislation, you know, that was written up under coming from a different piece of legislation, but it was awful. Look what it did. And yesterday on X, after the events in Huntingdon, which is only down the road from me, I live really close to Huntingdon, I saw thousands of posts. I went trawling X to have a look, and all calling for, this is a national emergency. He needs to declare a national emergency. We need martial law. We need and of course, I'm saying, why are you all calling for your own enslavement?
Because they're morons. That's why they're sheep. They're easily led, unfortunately. And
well, it's some really big names calling for this, Sonia, and I know you and I will know it's the same usual suspects that are doing it.
Usual suspects. They're traitors. They are not patriots. I've been very clear around here that the people who shout loudest about being patriots turning out to be the traitors. But I also think we have to be careful because there are other agendas that are attaching themselves to this as well. And one of the things that concerns me greatly is this Together organisation event that is taking place on Sunday, the 16th November. Together formed around 2020 during C19. I've been in the so-called freedom truth movement for decades or around it, and I'd never heard of any of these people who were involved in it. And they struck me as how they strike me now, and that was a bunch of middle-class people who'd suddenly found themselves on the sharp end of what everybody else was experiencing, and they were working out how to opportunistically turn this around. But what's interesting about the Sunday 16th of November event is, and I've seen loads of comments online, but that actually is full of Zionist speakers, Claire. And that's what I'm concerned about, attaching other agendas. So you have people like, well, let's have a look, Alison Pearson, Alex Phillips, I mean, just it's a pile of people that are part of the Zionist agenda, right? So that is troubling. Are you troubled by that event and what it could really be about?
Yeah, I am, and I think this often happens. And I you know, let's be kind and say that perhaps Together or the people that run it don't necessarily understand that they perhaps could be used for certain things. I mean, Alison Pearson herself has said some of the most, in my opinion, disgusting things, and, you know, about what has gone on over the last 2 years with respect to what is happening in West Asia. Alex Phillips has just, I'm not sure if she's still even on the tour or back from the propaganda tour of Israel, but you know,
has she been there kissing the wall? Is that where she's
licking
been?
the wall? Yeah, you know. So you know, and we really need to be. I know this is a very polarizing issue for people because of the propaganda that has been around that particular issue. But this organisation now seems to be infested with what I would call Zionist narratives, or people that run Zionist narratives. And in fact, the whole immigration issue and how this is marketed to people in social media actually has a very Zionist narrative to it, you know.
100%. And as we said yesterday, and as I said already on this show, two things can be correct. We could be dealing with mass uncontrolled immigration, which we are, but we can also be dealing with a Zionist agenda to demonize people as well. So all of those things can be absolutely correct. And you and I are not interested in those agendas. We are interested only in the truth and stopping as much of the digital ideas possible. Let me read you, just moving on, what Swiss Miss, one of our other lovely commentators, and I mentioned this to you yesterday because I don't know about this either, which is Canada's Bill C8, which a cybersecurity bill apparently aims to strengthen the protection, this is their words, the protection of critical infrastructure such as telecommunications, banking and energy. Did you find out any more about it? Because Swiss Miss is really concerned.
So I couldn't find anything too detailed about it, but I didn't have an awful lot of time to have a look. But Canada itself, actually, when I started looking, has got an awful lot of bills on the table. Unsurprisingly, when you look at, as we've said, it's a global agenda. They've got and I will look more at this particular bill and provide you with some information, Sonia, even if it's not for a few days. I'll see what I can find out. But they've got several related initiatives. They've got Federal Bill C27, the Digital Charter Implementation Act. They've got Quebec's Bill 82, focused on establishing an national digital identity, and obviously the one that you've mentioned as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on in Canada, just like there is in the UK, because of course we have the Online Safety Act, which has caused certain problems. with respect to freedom of speech. We've also had the Data Use and Access Act, which has watered down certain protections about your data. It's never just one thing, but I will look at that bill more. I couldn't find really over and above what you said to me yesterday, but I will have a look.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Swiss Miss, we'll keep getting back to you on that, because we know Canada is like some kind of hellhole, totalitarian hellhole. But the thing that I think there's several more things that I just need to cover with you. And one is, we must be under no illusion, as you said, that this is a military grade psychological operation that is taking place on us. And divide and fear, divide and conquer, rather, the fear. So, and start to tell us about some of the 12 points that you've raised up that are being used against us.
On my Substack, I decided to start covering psychological manipulation, because it's clear when you look at stuff and the way that it is framed. When we talk about framing, you all know, Sonia, but just in case some of your audience don't, we're talking just really about the wording that is used to put stories in the media or on social media, and the alternative media is infested with this, and people need to be very aware of it, because once you learn to spot it, you will be able to spot perhaps these people aren't really what they say they are. So you've got framing, which is the use of wording to basically present something to you that is presented in the way that the establishment want it presented. So, for instance, very simply, what you will see, especially with conflicts, is when it's you're talking about Western actions, you'll hear phrasing like collateral damage to soften the fact that actually this is civilians that have been murdered. Yes. Or you'll hear that Palestinians have been killed, or Palestinian youth. So you won't hear children murdered, but you will hear it if it's on the Western side.
You won't hear victims. You won't hear anything like that. They won't
Correct.
Show that these.
So
people
that's
are
what
victims.
we mean.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we mean by framing. You've a big one that they use is obviously carrot and stick. So what this goes along with nudging, and we're seeing this with the veterans for one login to get a digital veterans card. They're being offered these carrots. Oh, if you get this, you'll be able to get extra discounts, or things will be easier. So we call that a carrot. That they're offering you little things to go into something, and then we'll get the stick, which we're seeing with company directors. If you don't do this, then you will lose this. So there's 12 core psychological tactics that people can go and read about, and then I've gone on and tried to provide some real like kind of headlines that you would be seeing in media, and all of this is to make people, to stop people being able to critically analyze it. It's very much predicated on fear, because once you get into fear, you are into your limbic brain system or your reptilian brain system, and you simply cannot think straight. You are acting from the wrong place, and the whole of media, government speak, even social media is absolutely infested with psychological manipulation, and it is, as you say, military grade.
Oh, well done. That's well said. But there is a way to fight back. And one of the things that you suggested, which I love, is to use their wokeness, for want of a better description, against them. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, they've gone so far with anyone can be anything that they want to. If I decide I can be a cat today, that's all right. And you've got to go along with it. And I think we had a conversation, and one of the things that obviously I'm concerned about with digital ID is also the NHS app. And it's really difficult for people to get blood test results and things like that without they're being told, no, you have to go on the app and use it. And I don't see any problem. Public institutions that have a public sector equality duty, the Equality Act applies. And if all I would be saying to my doctor or anything, and this is where people need to be prepared to be really embarrassing and difficult, is I can't see it on a screen. I don't use AI. I can't afford the internet connection anymore because the government have made me so poor with all of their taxation. My eyes are too bad. I need it in paper, anything to be as difficult as possible. And when they say no, then you start saying to them, you are not making a reasonable adjustment for me. So I'm going to complain about that. And when they start hearing those kind of words, then you will find that they will miraculously all of a sudden be able to provide you with another way of getting into something.
I think what you're doing is such valuable work, Claire. I really do. I think that it's very hard for us because, as we said at the start, it's like it's like a snowball, isn't it? Like a snowball rolling down a hill. It's all gathering this great momentum, but there are ways to come out against it. And we mustn't forget about that. And you also pointed out that if any of us have felt the need to log into the system in any way, we can also apply for, a subject access request and the right to be forgotten. Really important. For those who don't know that, just explain that briefly, would you?
So a data subject access request is when you put in a request, and you can do this to anybody where your data might have gone. So Tesco for their facial recognition, One Login if you've accidentally gone into the system because you didn't really realize what it was. Don't panic. Okay, at the moment you can still delete your One Login account. So you would put the data subject access request in to One Login, and as we know, this is a hot potato. It keeps getting moved around. It's now at the Cabinet Office, which I'm very concerned about. But you would put in your data subject access request. I have a template letter on my Substack that everybody is welcome to use. You will then find out where all your data has gone, unless they can come up with a valid excuse as to why they can't give you that information. And then you would go and invoke your right to be forgotten after that to those individual departments, delete your One Login account, and that's that. It won't remove everything because there's a valid legal exemptions as to why companies and One Login would need to keep certain portions of your data. But what's really interesting about data subject access requests is, and I started this campaign because I want people to feel empowered. All the speak that's coming out is to make people afraid, and that they don't have anything that they can do, and they're captured by this, and they don't have any power. You really do. So every time you go into Tesco and they've got their bloody facial recognition, which some of the stores use, they're on the Pegasus system where they give it to the police. Put your data subject access request in. It takes 2 minutes. There's the template letter, and they have 30 days to reply to you. And if they don't, you could end up with compensation. Okay. And it puts them under so much strain. If people do this all the time, it costs them so much money because they can't charge you.
Right. Yeah. Listen, amazing. Wonderful to have you with us this morning. I feel like I've had a thorough education. No, I do. I love the way that you explain. It is so simple. And I deal with a multitude of subjects. So it means I can't fully understand every single one, but you've made it really easy for me to understand this morning. Everybody, this is Clare Wills Harrison. I've already put, I believe, a link in the description below to her Substack. Please support this incredible woman. She's doing a public service for us all. Lovely to have you with us today, Clare.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Take good care of yourself.
Thank you.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Take good care of yourself. Clare Wills Harrison, everybody. Lovely. Wonderful to have her with us. Wonderful. Right. I'm just waiting for my third guest to arrive, and then we'll be starting on the J Slater round table. I can see you two lovely people there in the studio. If any of you can chase up the third member, I would really appreciate it. That would be brilliant. Thank you so much. And I noted a comment saying Graham Moore's case for voting fraud is today. No coverage. Kelly, you missed the start of the show where I mentioned it and said I'd look forward to Graham joining us and giving us a lowdown of what it involves. And Jamaica, what the hell is happening in Jamaica? Like days after Hurricane Melissa has pummeled the island, is absolutely insane. And these people are now in absolutely devastated communities. Where's the aid? Where is the aid for these people? Roads are blocked. There's debris. People are isolated with little or no food. There's no power. There's no running water. No idea where normalcy will return. But here's the thing. Jamaica is a Commonwealth country, which means King Charles has some responsibility. Why isn't more being done? Jamaica has influenced the world in terms of fashion, in terms of music, in terms of sport and other matters. Why is it being just left as if it's of no consequence whatsoever? It concerns me greatly that they're being left with no help, no food, no water, no aid. What is happening? What is happening? Right. How are you in the chat? Are you busy? Are you busy? I'm sure you are. You usually are. It's heartbreaking, Claire. What's powdered egg? What's that? Oh, did Charles send thoughts and prayers, Elle? How nice of him. How very, very nice of him. They don't care about those people. They don't care about us. You get shot in the food. Oh, God. Jamaica recently signed up to the smart city thing. Obviously unrelated. Completely, I should imagine. Completely. Oh, you're waiting for the people who bully a grieving mother online. Now, look, let's be really clear about this. I already talked about this at the intro. I'm seeing a lot of troll-like behavior going on in the live chat, and I don't tolerate that shite. That's not where I'm coming from. I believe in a free flow of information. And the reason that I've invited these people to join me today is not to debate theories on the case. It's to discuss why a Channel 4 documentary chose to demonize people, and why I know as an investigative journalist of many decades that this is part of an agenda that should concern us all. So do the decent thing. Please take part in the chat, in the live chat. But honestly, truly, no need to troll. And our regulars, you know the deal, right? Just block them. You don't need that nonsense. We don't need it. Free speech does allow trolls, Humphrey. You're absolutely right. But wouldn't it be good if we could all kind of like have a decent adult conversation? Because I think that's important. I really do. Randy says, I never see the trolls. It is so hard to follow the chat. I am Danish. Are all those things related, Randy? Right. I am tempted to bring in my two guests. And if the third one joins, he does. And if he doesn't, what? Oh, so what happened to free speech? Yeah. Well, you're still here making comments, aren't you? That's what happened to free speech. But what we don't allow, because it's actually unfair to everybody else in the live chat, is abuse. Right? That's not the kind of community that I've built around here. I've built a community of people where we are all allowed to have some kind of say. And that would include Jay's mum, should she want it. Absolutely. Happy Monday to you all. Never too old. Right. Let's do this. Let me bring them in. This is Duncan Smith. Good morning to you, Duncan. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Sonia. How are you?
Good. I'm grand, thank you. You're the one that's had the most emails, which is interesting. And this is Jan. Hello, Jan. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Sonia. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to join you this morning.
Not at all. I think it's important to. Jan, you might have the video on, because I can hear me coming back at me. Somebody has got an additional YouTube video on. Hello, there you go. It's gone. Beautiful, wonderful. Thank you, Jan. You of course contacted me. You were deeply concerned by the Channel 4 documentary about Jay Slater, and rightly so. I watched it, I reviewed it, and it was absolutely apparent to me that what we were dealing with is an overarching agenda to silence content creators. Duncan, you were featured in the video. And as I'd explained to all of you in an email, we haven't gathered together today to discuss the various theories of Jay, although that may come up quite naturally. But what we all think about a documentary on a major broadcaster that clearly set out to demonize content creators. So I'm going to start with you, Duncan. Duncan, when you saw yourself on this program, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I wasn't surprised at all that they seemed to focus on the content creators who had got the most abuse, but also were the ones that got the most reaction. I wasn't surprised to see myself. In fact, I kind of guessed who they were going to pick for this documentary, because as you said, Sonia, it was pretty clear this was agenda driven. And when I thought about it, I thought, I can predict the 3 or 4 they're going to highlight here. So I wasn't shocked to see myself. But what I was really shocked about was how clumsy the propaganda really was. Because when I appeared, we had the MP Sarah Smith going, talking with Debbie Duncan and saying, yes, we need to look into these platforms and how can we restrict all this. And then a few seconds later, I'm there. And the only question I asked was, why is it that 100% of the people have to be 100% respectful of the family of the missing person in cases like this? Now, you might as well have put a big flashing arrow pointing down to my head saying this is a guy that's, going to be behind bars once Jay's law is introduced. It
Right,
was
right,
clumsy, and it
right.
wasn't the right way of presenting what we do. That was why I was upset.
And fair point. And let me just say that I've just received an email from, or I've just seen it from Wax Unfiltered. He was due to join us today, but he's had an emergency and is unable to join us today. These things happen. We won't be able to repeat it, unfortunately. He says maybe I can join in the future, but it's not something that we're going to repeat, but we're going to give it our best shot today. And that is what we're going to do. So I take your point. Absolutely, Duncan, is this whole idea that there is this overarching agenda. There was in this documentary a meeting between Debbie Duncan and Sarah Smith, her MP, and they were talking very much about contacting social media, about accounts, which again really troubles me. Now, I want to be very clear here is I absolutely am not coming from the position of demonizing parents of their son who went missing and then was said to have been found dead. But we should be allowed to question. We shouldn't be force-fed official narratives. Jan, tell me, why does this case interest you and your thoughts on the Channel 4 documentary?
I've been following this case for the best part of a year, I think. And obviously, being a mother myself, I've had teenagers, they're older now. So I've always looked at it as a mother, always. And when I've done videos on it, it's always come from a place of being a mother. I was interested in the documentary because I had a feeling where it was going to go, and I felt that they were just so wrong to vilify YouTubers that have spent months and months going over this case. Months of it, and to label everybody as a troll or a vile troll is their favourite thing to say is just so unfair. And I was so angry that they put faces to the supposed trolls, being Duncan and Wax and a couple of others. And yeah, and I'm still left with that feeling of anger because it is so wrong to paint that narrative that everyone that has spoken out about the Jay Slater case is merely scaremongering, is merely putting out false narratives, and that is wrong, absolutely wrong.
The documentary, which I talked about before, The Disappearance of Jay Slater, is very much the family's story, and it follows them as they search for answers about what happened to Jay. And obviously a huge chunk of it is about witnessing the so-called conspiracy theories online, as we say, and then the subsequent horrific abuse received by the family. And I am not familiar with the output of my guests on not the full output of my guests on the screen, and neither am I here to defend anybody's work. I'm talking about the overarching principle of where I see this going, and that does certainly disturb me greatly. Duncan, some of the emails I'd received from you was like, he's such a misogynist, you can't have him on. I'm like, none of this is actually, whether he is or whether he isn't, is actually irrelevant to what we're going to discuss. It is absolutely irrelevant. And I think really, we need to keep our eye on the ball, and the ball is very much that content creators they're coming after content creators, which will impact us all. And they may start with somebody that you don't like, but they will finish with somebody that you do like. So it is in all of our interests to question it, right? Duncan, I was quite alarmed by the access that the cameras had in this documentary. I found some of it extremely disturbing. At the funeral, at the autopsy, all places where cameras don't normally go. That to me told me it was absolutely an official narrative documentary. What did you think about that?
I had almost universal agreement on that, meaning nearly every person that contacted me about the documentary were quite shocked, whether they be, mothers, fathers, whoever, quite shocked that the family would be quite happy to have all this on film. And I'm one of those that, obviously a funeral especially when Debbie is weeping, is such a private moment. I just cannot think of the family thinking this is a good idea to broadcast this to the world. And it didn't feel right. And the other point I want to raise, Sonia, is you've got to consider that Candor Productions must have got in very, very quickly to secure this
Very.
agreement, because the funeral's in August. Jay was found in July, and that was all signed, sealed, delivered, ready for the cameras to start rolling. It looks like within days. Now, I don't know about you, Sonia, but if I had had devastating news like that, a tragic death, my first thought wouldn't be, yes, this is a good idea. Let me sign the dotted line and
Right.
we'll get the cameras rolling. It just
Right.
doesn't seem right.
Right. And Jan, one of the issues that I had with the documentary was I felt that there was this focus on content creators, but not actually with Mark Williams Thomas, former detective, who has spread so much of what Candor Productions seemed to object to, and yet he was literally missed out in its entirety in the documentary. Jan, did it feel like an elephant in the room was going missing to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mark Williams Thomas jumped on the case very early on, as he does with a lot of other cases. He was also on the Nicola Bulley case. And
Madeleine McCann.
yes. So when these people are saying, oh, it's the content creators that are putting out these stories, it's the content creators that are questioning this, a lot of our questions actually stemmed from what Mark Williams Thomas said initially. And he wasn't even included in the documentary. It's insane. He obviously, and also I don't think Debbie has actually mentioned his name. She mentioned some other buffoon fooling around in the terrain. She didn't mention Mark Williams Thomas.
Which I find extraordinary, because he made a whole big thing about how close they were. He was close to the family. He does that as well, I should point out. But a lot of the stuff that came from him was deeply disturbing, and we also understand it probably came via Lucy, Jay's friend, as well, whether it was to do with the alleged stolen watch, rather, knives down Jay's trousers, the fact that he was in fear. But I felt that the documentary, even though it was very much what the family want us to believe happened to Jay, which is obviously that he fell, and so that there was nothing untoward that took place in his death. I felt that there was so much going on in that documentary, Duncan, that it was almost like there were these red flags. Where she said when she arrived in Tenerife, she received a message saying, I'll give you one warning, your son won't be coming back. He owes us enough effing money. Kiss goodbye to him. And that wasn't the only thing that seemed like a threat, or that Jay's life was in danger. Did you find that extraordinary that nobody seemed to think that that might be a warning, like a legitimate warning?
Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, to this day, we still don't know the background to that message. And for anyone at the time to, shrug their shoulders and say, well, that must have been the first of the trolls. No, in regular investigative world, that is a massive red flag. It's alarming. There is no evidence on face value that is anyone messing around. You must take that kind of thing seriously. And to this day, we've never actually found out who was behind it. Now, recently, I think it was in the Telegraph interview, Debbie said that she got the number, or she could see the number. She tried to call it back and it was ringing. Well, what was the number? Was that a Spanish number? Was it a UK number? I think Mark Williams Thomas at one point said that had been traced to a disposable SIM in the UK. He even threw out the name Malcolm. Well, who is this guy, Malcolm?
Right.
All the time, Sonia, we're getting these kind of leads from Debbie, from whoever, and then there's nothing after that. It's just left hanging. And this is why it's very, very unsatisfactory. But to your point, yeah, I don't think it made sense to anyone that message comes through to Debbie and she reads it. Zach takes a photo, so they've got that, and then no one finds out where it came from. End of story. It doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. And Jan, I think the point that people often seem to miss who are opposing your position is the fact that Lucy and the family, by taking advantage of a GoFundMe, they made it the public's business, because when you launch a GoFundMe, that then becomes in the public interest. Now, I'm not sure how much they ultimately made, but I thought it was well in excess of 50 grand, Jan. Do you know?
Yes, I understand they made it was over £70,000. And I'm also aware of the fact that there's never been any thanks. Debbie's been on numerous interviews, and in not one of them has she thanked the people that gave her all that money. And, you know, people are saying, well, you shouldn't be pocket watching, and, you know, it's none of your business. Well, I'm sorry. I think if I had been a donator, I would want to know what happened to that money. That's an awful lot of money. What did she do with it?
It is a lot of money. And as somebody who's launched my own previously, like legal fund, I'm accountable. I'm accountable to people who contributed to that. And you need to realize that. And that is a fact. And I make sure they know I'm accountable as well. And those are the realities when you make yourself that public. Now, I want to go back again to the clamping down on content creators, because I think that this is such an important point that we cannot overstress it. So there is absolutely an attempt to silence anyone deemed a conspiracy. Now, Duncan, going back to your point that you started with, and that is, I'm having to paraphrase you, but the whole idea is that we must accept this version that is being told to us, and anything that diverts from that is problematic. And Debbie gave an interview with Camilla Tominey, and Camilla Tominey is as establishment a hack as you can possibly get. But they turned off the comments, unlike here where we leave the comments on so people can have their say. But it is concerning, Duncan. And so do you think ultimately we're reaching a point with the aid of Jay's story where anybody who questions any official narrative will be either subject to police investigation or what? What do you think, Duncan?
I think we're already there.
Right.
I've had, numerous communications, threats, all the rest of it. But Sonia, I don't live in the UK anymore, and one of the reasons I left a long time ago was because I could see the way it was going.
Right.
That you can say certain things online, no problem. But if you cross a line and certain groups or certain people, the Jay's Law is mentioning, the families of missing persons, you simply cannot say anything. And I don't accept that. I know this sounds extreme, but I would rather go to a different jurisdiction where for the rest of my life, I can say exactly what I want. And Sonia, I do word what I say very carefully. I'm very precise. If I say, this is my idea, or it seems to me, or allegedly, a lot of us are very careful how we phrase what we put out there. And when you're told, you're not going to be able to say that under Jay's Law, it's a very, very, dark day.
It is a dark day, and what really concerns me is bad law is made on the back of the behavior that is considered the worst of us. Right now, there will be people who will have said stuff about Jay online which I will find absolutely egregious, right? Because I always do bear in mind these are grieving parents, this is a grieving family, and I want to acknowledge that as well, but not to the point where we must be silenced about something that simply does not add up. Now, Jan, you and I think, are both on the same page here, and that is the official narrative doesn't add up, but to question it puts you in this weird situation. I mean, has this directly impacted you yet? What kind of, have you been doxxed? Have you been what have you been subject to as a consequence of asking questions, Jan?
Well, firstly, I mean, the major one was, I think, when I did a live stream with Duncan, and I wasn't prepared for the amount of abuse and targeted harassment within my own live stream. And it was insane. The hatred, we're called everything, and it goes beyond just saying, oh, shut up, you daft bint, or something like that. It's very personal, and I wasn't aware of it to begin with. And then I saw that somebody had written something in there specifically about Duncan and, you know, personal things. And I thought, this is insane. You know, we're not just coming online just to have a pop at people. We're talking about things that we have investigated. We have proof of it. We have receipts, as they say online. And to try and attack us is just disgusting. I think it goes beyond trolling. And they've looked back at all our old videos, and it's just insane. It's like, just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as I said before, and that is, you know, that it may take down one person you dislike, but it'll ultimately take us all down. So I see anybody's attempts at clamping down on our freedom of speech as egregious, whether I agree with them or not. It's irrelevant to me. I think that we're seeing enough online as it is now. Duncan, you mentioned about Jay's Law. Is that like a legitimate title that they're trying to push through?
Well, firstly, I've never heard of a law that's being pushed through under the name of someone that was convicted for, you know, violent assault. That's a little bit unusual, and we've got to speak the truth here. You know,
Speak the
Jay
truth.
had
Speak
a
the truth.
violent past. Yeah, so I don't think it's a good idea to have Jay's name attached to this law. It's a minor point. It's the actual law that worries me greatly. I don't think it's going to go very far. I mean, who knows in this day and age? Are there enough parliamentarians that think that shutting people up talking about a missing persons case is a good idea? Maybe. I don't think so. But Sonia, I just want to point out one serious, really serious situation that goes with this Jay's Law proposal. And that is, if you are someone that is found to have been giving out misinformation in a missing persons case, does that mean that you are liable for charges? Like someone that says, I'm pretty sure I saw that boy in this town at 6 p.m.
Right.
And then that turns out not to be the case.
Right.
Is someone going to be calling you and saying, and you hurt the feelings of a missing person's family, and now we have to bring charges? So we may find that people are very, very reluctant. I would be very reluctant to step forward and confidently say, I think I have some information that could help you. Because the way it is phrased at the moment, if that turns out to be misinformation, then I'm in trouble. So what is the end game here? That the public shouldn't say what they think has happened in a case? That is very dangerous.
That is very dangerous indeed. And it takes me back to one of the kind of, you know, most famous missing people cases that we have, which is Madeleine McCann. And that is something that is of great interest to me. I've made 2 documentaries. And if somebody told me that I could stop questioning that, I would have a real big problem, because that involves so much corruption. It's extraordinary. And I don't believe for a second that the parents have done everything that they possibly could, including reconstructions. So the idea that we can't question, or that it's going to be problematic to question missing persons is really alarming to me indeed. Jan, thank you. That's a good point, Ian. It is. Ian, is it Ian or Duncan? I'm confused. Duncan.
I'm fine with either. I go with Duncan because that's what most people call me. Ian's my first name. It doesn't matter, Sonia.
Right. But just before we go, Jan, obviously you came to me, you wanted to make these points, and I take them as well. And I want to give both of you an opportunity to say a kind of final thing to my audience. So Jan, do you want to say your final piece, what you want my audience to know? And then we'll go to Duncan.
Yes, well, firstly, I want to say thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate you giving, you know, us the opportunity to have our voices heard, because the things that are being put out by mainstream media are just so unfair, because at the end of the day, we are people, as you can see. You know, I'm an artist, Duncan is a translator, we all do different things, and to try and lump us all together as some sort of virus within online, online is just so unfair. So I want to thank you so very much for that, Sonia. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
That's it, really.
It's all about free flow of conversation for me, and I think that's important. And equally, I would give other people who oppose the Jay Slater story a platform as well. Were they being targeted and demonized by a major broadcaster? But that's not what's happened. It's only one side who have been targeted and demonized. So on that note, Duncan, you were targeted and demonized. What final thing do you want to say to my audience?
Two final things, if I might, Sonia, very quickly.
You may. Yes.
Number one, this demonization. Some people don't realize that a lot of our followers, whether it be Wax, Jan, myself, whoever, a lot of our followers are also grieving mothers. We have many that have said they have lost someone, their son or daughter got killed or got, in trouble abroad. And they fully support us. So it's not the divide that we have grieving mothers on one side and those that are against them on the other. Very much on our side that want free speech and want more questions asked about what happened in the Jay Slater case. They've gone through the same thing in some situations as Debbie. So there isn't really that divide. It's a false divide. Second thing I want to point out, Sonia, is that when we get lumped, if you want to call us armchair detectives or sleuths, whatever, when we get lumped with trolls, that is a complete misnomer, because I've done over 500 videos on the Jay Slater case, and I'm not doing all the work. The people that supply information to me are actually professionals. They are retired in most cases, but they're well educated. I have writers, doctors, retired police officers. I have men on the ground, well, one man on the ground in Tenerife that goes by to check things out. This is not just some troll typing away for fun. I put hours of research, and before I put anything out there, I filter it through, I look at it, and I think, is this worth putting out there? This is something that we work very hard on. Now, if you disagree with what we say, that's fine. But just to label us as trolls and put us in the, you're out there to cause problems, not at all. It is not what you think. There's a lot of work goes into what we produce.
I take that point, and that's very interesting that you raised that issue about that's another kind of false divide that's been created, isn't it? It's very emotive. I mean, extremely emotive. As a parent myself, my heart absolutely goes out to Jay's parents, but I'm going to be very clear here. It is not for them to decide or direct how people examine a case that is in the public interest. And that is really my position. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. We have had some people, as you can imagine, who are very upset in the comments, but some people are very grateful that you're here as well. So it's a balance. It's a balance. And I've been around this block many times. A little bit of trolling never worried me at all. Jan, thank you for contacting me. I very much appreciate it. Duncan, thank you for joining us today. Everybody, I will put a link in the description to both these people's channels, and I'm very grateful that they were prepared to step up to the plate and have a live conversation with me. And a live conversation in itself can be problematic. They didn't even know what I was going to throw at them. I could throw anything at them. So thank you for being brave enough to face it. Take good care of yourself. Duncan and Jan, lovely to have you with us. Take good care of yourself. Lovely, wonderful. And and I'm glad we had that conversation. Thank you. You're welcome, Joanne. Justice for Jay's parents. Okay, I get that. What justice? What justice? Talk to me. Leave Jay Slater's parents alone. Tell me, what justice for Jay's parents? Because I don't know if there is justice that can be had for Jay's parents at this stage. Their son died in circumstances that are still highly questionable. Surely the justice should be that the truth should be told. No, maybe I got that wrong. No, I haven't. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you all. Justice for Jay Slater. Absolutely. I think it's really important to keep asking questions. Absolutely. Justice for all. Right. Lovely to have you all with us. Right. I want to talk about this man. Where is he? Where is this image? Anybody see this image? These images over the weekend? Sean Puffy Combs. I call him Puffy because I've been around a long time, and I interviewed him and I knew him as Puffy, and he only changed it from being Puffy because obviously there's a lot of problems attached to the name of being called Puffy, and he changed it to Diddy. But this is him. And this is him. Didn't I say, was it last week or the week before? No, it was last week. Last Monday, they are so keen to get a presidential pardon for this man that what they've now done is they said that he woke up with a knife at his throat, right? Highly questionable whether that actually happened. But they've moved him to a softer option prison. They've moved him from the Brooklyn prison to FCI Fort Dix in New Jersey for the remainder of his prison sentence. Combs has served approximately 4 months so far of his 50-month sentence. He was convicted in July of flying girlfriends and male sex workers for sexual encounters. He was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering charges. And Combs' lawyer has asked Federal Appeals Court to quickly consider the legality of his conviction and sentence. And he has asked Donald Trump for a pardon. And Donald Trump knows Diddy and has done for a long time. There's a mass of pictures of Trump and Diddy together, but this is Diddy in his new home out in the exercise yard with the lads. Probably not even him. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Now, I think that's actually something worth picking up because I think it's interesting. At one stage, Diddy was completely untouchable, all-seeing, all-powerful. Now, I can also be critical about people who want to be famous and they will do anything in order to be famous and then they play the victim afterwards. It's wrong. And in this day and age, we now know that a lot of people have been abused in their rush to become famous. And some people were completely naive. When it was happening in the past, they were completely naive that this was happening en masse, that the whole casting couch situation was in effect, that there were abusers, etc. Right? But not now. There is nobody on this earth, surely, who can be unaware that if you compromise yourself sexually to these beasts, then you also have a responsibility. You also have a responsibility. And one of the reasons that Puffy's trial was such an astonishing failure was the prosecution against him was weak. It was weak. It featured 2 women that he'd been involved with and both wanted to be famous. That's problematic. That's not coming into court with clean hands. And that doesn't mean that they are as bad as him. Not at all. They're still victims. Okay. They're still victims, but the case against him was absolutely weak. All it essentially mounted to was him and his girlfriends flying in male prostitutes. A lot of people do that. And the way that he was demonized, people came out and said that they knew all these things about him. I wasn't one of those people. I didn't know those things about him. I'd been to his home. I'd been interviewed by him. I certainly wasn't a Puffy apologist, but I didn't know these things that people were claiming about him. And it turns out nobody did, because it turns out a whole lot of stuff was made up. And this is a problem. This is a problem. And so he will be pardoned. I'll put money on it. They'll find a way, because the fact that they've now lowered where he is in prison, he's going to be pardoned. They're definitely getting him out. They definitely are. Right. How are you all? Your coffee has gone cold. What? That's what I thought. What's going on? Thinking minds matter. I have no idea what's going on in the comments, and it doesn't matter. Keep on talking, people. Keep on talking. Right. So yes. So you're absolutely right. How the mighty have fallen. And in some respects, this is good for him. This is good for him because he definitely was a bully. He was definitely a bully to people around him. He was definitely horrendous with people's royalties, rather. There's no doubt about that. So he was somebody that was just like the worst attributes of the music industry, but all the things that were said about him were never proven. That doesn't mean they aren't true, of course. Just because somebody isn't proven to be a predator or a pedophile or whatever, it doesn't mean that they aren't. Not saying that he was accused of being a pedophile, by the way, although some people said he was. I mean, that's the thing is, again, that goes back to what we've just been discussing, is a lot of people were coming online. They were making these really serious accusations against him, but with no evidence whatsoever. I think it's interesting what Duncan had to say. He said, I'm paraphrasing him, but he's like, I don't just shoot from the hip. I actually think about what I'm saying. Well, a lot of people were saying stuff about Diddy were not thinking about what they were saying. And that in itself is problematic and can be used against us. So I don't want to silence or censor people online, but I do ask that people, do the very best they can to talk about the truth and not spread lies. And there's a whole lot of lie spreading online. And I think that's problematic. Anyway, there you go. There he is, Diddy. Right. Where are we up to, beautiful people? Beautiful, beautiful people. So also, shout out to women. Can you please stop patronizing any women's institutions that do not have respect for you? And I talk in particular about Glamour magazine. Glamour magazine is a woman's magazine. And 9 of the women of the year in the current edition are men. Men, aping as women. That is a magazine that took its core audience and said, F you. If any, and also Glamour magazine is dying anyway. It's no longer on a print run. It's available only online. It's been dying for a long while, both US and UK editions. But to do that is really egregious. And so any woman who supports any institution that wants to erase you and replace you with these autogynephiles, you should reject. You absolutely should reject. If you don't know what an autogynephile is, it will apply almost certainly to most of those trans identified males. An autogynephile is somebody who is turned on by being viewed as the opposite sex. So yeah, a lot of perversions going on, people, a lot of perversions. And Lisa, how are you? How are you, people? How are you? A lot of women ain't glamorous anymore, says DJ Markson. Isn't it true? I like a bit of glamour myself. I do like a bit of glamour. Want something amusing, kids. By the way, I've just found this on my desk. Obviously, it was Halloween over the weekend. Didn't say much about that at all. Although did have a pumpkin case full of sweets for the kids in our street because it's cool. But my daughter went to a fancy dress party as, look at that. I got one of them. Do you remember this? These were the creatures in Toy Story. Do you remember who they thought that Buzz Lightyear was their leader? I love this. I think this is so funny. Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes. Shelley wants to know, what is a woman these days? Good point, Shelley. The same that always was, right? Adult human female. Drum, you got a knee injury. Hope you're well soon. Isn't it cute, Gina? I absolutely love it. I love it. I love that movie. I do love that. I love the Toy Story movies. Do you love it, Synchronized Soul? Thank you, darling. Want to talk about this? The US government shutdown. Really, really troubling, right? So we're on this side of the Atlantic, we have all these, rabble rousers like civil war. And on the other side, the government began this shutdown on October the 1st. And what happened was the Democrats and Republicans had failed to agree on a funding bill. And it's now past 1 month. Around 730,000 federal employees, which is 32% of the federal workforce, have been working without pay. And 670,000 have been furloughed, sent home without pay, because government departments can't legally pay them in the US. And that number will absolutely go up as the shutdown drags on and government departments run out of money. But what happened over the weekend was the more of the funding stopped on November the 1st, because the shutdown has led to this mass disruption, or even actually full cessation of a number of services, including food assistance. Now, neither side on the political aisle have backed down. Trump wants this big, beautiful bill, and the shutdown has resulted. But to me, this is absolutely part of the agenda, because you know what? If you want people to riot, make them work without pay, right? And cut the benefits that they've been used to for a very long period of time. And you know what? The last shutdown was during Trump's first term as a US president. It was a partial shutdown. It was the longest in US history. It lasted 35 days from December the 22nd, 2018 to January 25th, 2019. It was sparked by a row over the building of a wall along the border with Mexico. But what has happened this weekend, and it is worth talking about to some degree, because America has a culture which is very welfare dependent and has been made so. So SNAP, right? SNAP is the supplemental nutrition assistance program. Now, 42 million Americans are in receipt of these benefits. And essentially, it's like a debit card that gets loaded up with money each month, and people can go and use it for their food bills. And as I say, some 42 million Americans rely on that, which is problematic in its own right. And what happened was on Friday, a federal judge ordered Trump to release emergency funding for SNAP before the November the 1st cutoff. And another ruled that the government is likely illegally blocking the emergency money. Then on Saturday, US District Judge John J. McConnell ordered that the government needed to tell the court by today how it would fund SNAP accounts. Now, to be very clear, there is some interesting stuff going on online regarding this. First of all, on TikTok and on other social medias, but primarily on TikTok, there is a glorification of welfare in the US that doesn't happen in the UK. Now, clean hands. I grew up on welfare. My mum had 4 of us children, and 3, my siblings' father had died of cancer, and then my mum had married my father and he'd left. So my mum, who was very, very sick with kidney disease, was taking care of the 4 of us, and we grew up on welfare. Free school dinners were absolutely essential, and I never forget where I'm coming from, which is why I absolutely will not shite on people in receipt of welfare or benefits, because the truth is that the government, whether it's the UK, the US, or wherever, should do more to ensure that there is more money in people's pockets rather than what we are enduring. We should never have a situation where a major corporation like Tesco or Walmart is part subsidized by the taxpayers, and they are. Certainly Tesco's as one example. Many Tesco's employers are in receipt of universal, not universal, but the income, the job income. What's it called? I've forgotten it. Remind me in the comments. So well said. Thank you, Glennis. But yes, so it's wrong. It is absolutely wrong that we, the taxpayers, are funding these major corporations that make endless profit and fund them to pay their staff. And that happens in the US as well. Universal credit. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, guys. Thank you, kids. I knew you'd help me with it. So it's wrong that happens, first of all. But people should have decent incomes. Nobody should be doing more than one job. Nobody should be doing more than one full-time job in order to be able to have a decent standard of living. And the reason that we are not able to do that is because our representatives in Parliament are largely on the boards of these companies, whether it's the fuel companies, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, and it is all about putting the squeeze on us. And that is no different in the US. And also, I believe that Trump, like Keir Starmer, has a disdain for impoverished people. There is no empathy for people struggling. It is insane to me that 42 million Americans are relying on these SNAP benefits. And what they've done is there is, as I say, a glorification that has taken place online. And so what you have are these really kind of ignorant, obese people with their SNAP benefit cards, and they are flaunting it. And they're like, oh yeah, I can get steak and I've got this. Well, now here's the thing. All the people whose SNAP benefits will have stopped over the weekend, they will now get a taste of what it's like to work and have to bring in an income in order to be able to pay these bills yourself. And when I talk about a welfare culture, that also exists as well. But again, going back to the Jay Slater story, it is very bad to use a minority in order to be able to force through bad laws. And so what they're doing is they're taking these obese people on TikTok who are flaunting these SNAP benefits, and they are using them as examples of how apparently everybody in receipt of food vouchers and food support in the US are all on the take. And it's simply not true. It's simply not true. And I'm already over the weekend, I've seen reports that some US stores were closing their doors to pick up only because there are people online on TikTok saying, well, when my SNAP benefit stops, I'm going and I'm stealing. And there's also people online who have already stolen this weekend, and they're there with their hauls. It's like, do you understand how this works? The police can literally follow what you're doing. So it's true. There are generations of people in the US, like the UK, who have been on welfare forever. There is a dependency for some people, but they are always the minority. And I almost think that these people who have gone online and done all this provocation, they've been used by the Trump administration. But the reality is the US, like the UK, we need to tackle these long-standing issues that make it so that people have to rely on benefits. And I'm not convinced cutting off dead is designed to do anything but create widespread rioting and looting, and that will enable more totalitarian rules to be brought in. And as I say, Trump does not care about the poor. He cares about business. And we also should be very disapproving of these people who are using social media to provoke others. And SNAP, by the way, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, it has access to a $5 billion contingency fund, which may essentially sustain the benefits for a few weeks, but it won't last forever. And Trump doesn't want to use it. The Trump administration has said it will not use emergency funds to prop up the program. And it's so ironic, isn't it? Because in the US, isn't it an annual amount of something like 25 billion that they send to Israel, where they can't, but yet they can't feed their own. And by the way, the other narrative, which is false, is this whole idea, because a lot of the people who are provocative online are Black people, but actually the SNAP program, it is actually white Americans who make up the largest percentage of recipients for SNAP food stamp programs. So yeah, America, the American administration can spend its money on a genocide, but not on feeding its own people. But ultimately, I believe that we need to tackle issues, because some people simply do not have the confidence to go out and get work, because it's been inherent in their family for a very long time that they don't. It's a system that they want to get into. Yes, Elle, they do. That's exactly what they want to do. Kerry, what good question. How many vax damage people's on benefits? That is a study worth undertaking. Humphrey said the humiliation trying to get benefits in UK is off the charts. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. I think I've talked about my own brother before. My brother Jesse, God rest his soul. My brother Jesse worked all his life, and then he came down with the same kidney disease that impacted my mum. And he became incredibly ill. He had a heart attack. I mean, all manner of stuff happened. He had a kidney transplant. And eventually it was all sorted, but trying to get him the assistance that he needed was absolutely obscene. My other brother, Bern, and my sister-in-law, they were helping him and taking care of him, but it was like a humiliation ritual. It was awful. Pit claims have risen. Is that true, Em? Need to look into that. Right. Okay, they're still arguing about Jay Slater, it would appear in the comments. Fine, you do your thing, people. Some good news. I like to be able to bring some good news, right? But anyway, my point is, if you suddenly see rioting in the States, don't be at all surprised, because it's all planned. And if you see rioting in the UK, it's because you have agitators. It's you have agitators that they kill me at this moment in time, but I mean that metaphorically. Some good news. Patrick Mills was with us the other week, English comics writer and editor who's often known as the godfather of British comics. And he came on to talk about the Knights of St. Columba and the close similarities and ties to Freemasonry. He's had a response from the Knights of St. Columba, right? So what's happened is, and thank you, Patrick, he tweeted me, special thanks to Sonia Poulton for inviting me on her show to talk about the Knights of St. Columba. The Knights immediately responded, proposing to write an apology, and it's an apology for the childhood abuse that he received. But don't anybody tell me we're not making strides, because if you can get an organization like the Knights of St. Columba to contact Patrick and say we are going to issue you with an apology for what you have endured, then I'm all for that. And more besides, by the way, because words are great, but actually people need to be compensated. Yeah, they do. Because sometimes the only way that you can make people pay is literally financially. It's good news, right? It's really good news. Right. Kind words, as always, to you lovely people. Jules came up with a brilliant idea, I should say. Jules loves our deep dives that we do on Fridays. Really loved the one about the BBC that I did on Friday, and said that she thinks that she said, I think the PPC, which, rather than the BBC, has a ring about it, and it's propaganda predator corporation. I kind of think that's much more descriptive of the BBC, Jules. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's the thing. You can work 30 years and have to fight for help if you get sick. Exactly that, Nosy Lou. It's really bad stuff. It's really bad stuff. It should never be like that. It shouldn't be like that for anybody, but we've made it very, very punishing. Sean's dad was in the Knights. That's a Faithian. Is that how I pronounce what will they introduce universal income, right, to replace food stamps? Good question. Need to talk about mums that encourage kids to cut and paste. I have no idea what that is. Thank you, Humphrey. I give it my best shot. It says Sonia is an expert at separating the wheat from the chaff. I give it my absolute best shot, people. Sonia, can you show your investigative journalism qualifications? You were in music briefly years ago. You're just an opinion-based channel, factually. Let's leave Jay Slater alone, right? I wonder if that's one of the family. My credentials are everywhere to see. 30 years of my work across all mainstream media channels. So don't be silly. Don't be silly in the comments. You're still allowed there to have your free speech. But what would be really great is if I could see your identity. Show me your identity, then I'll know that you're really legit. And if you don't show me your identity and you're talking like that, I think it's absolutely fine when people don't show their identity on the internet. But when they are actually legitimately trolling, that tells me they got something to hide. So you take good care of yourself, sweetheart. Yes, that's right, original nutter. I was, absolutely. Sonia, did that question bounce your britches? Not at all. I love a little bit of push and pull in the comments. I think it's really important. And apart from anything else, it sends us up on the algorithms, which is absolutely great. It makes more people see us. So carry on. Carry on, you beautiful people. Carry on, you beautiful people. And right, thank you as ever to my wonderful donators. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Margaret R, Alan A, Dean B, Stuart R, John G, Rachel G. You people are absolutely wonderful. And Nigel wrote in the comments last week, Sonia, I just discovered I was unsubscribed. That wasn't me. Anyway, wishing you bon weekend and a happy Halloween from a dark French forest, from Nigel. I've heard that before. I've heard that before, that people are saying they've been unsubscribed. And I'm sorry that that's happened to you. But please resubscribe. That would be absolutely wonderful. And by Christmas, I will have car stickers, at least, if nothing else, car stickers to send out to you wonderful people. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Right. I want to end on this. Remember where you come from. And we have another powerful full moon on the horizon this week. It's in Taurus, strong, firm, fixed, bonfire night. And strong historic references, obviously, to bonfire night, even if many of us now kind of hate and detest what fireworks do to our animals, to wildlife, to elderly, to vulnerable. But I started thinking about it, and there was something about this week that just kind of made me reflect on who I am, where I come from. I talk a little bit about it in the previous one, where I talk about we were raised on welfare, of which I'm very proud, and why I'm more than happy to support other people in need, because I think that's really important. So look, let me continue with this. Strong historic references to what's going on this week. But I'm getting some people in the chat now who are actually disturbed by some of the trolls. It isn't fair. Which tells me there is an agenda. Right? That I brought on some people, and there's a couple of people in the chat who are going absolutely crazy. Do you not know how to calm down? It might be really important for you at this moment, right, to take your hands off the internet, take one of your hands out of your pants or whatever it is you're doing, and just kind of like pull it together, right? Just kind of like pull it together. I think that is really important, really important. And because we gave you a chance for free speech on this platform. Yeah, we absolutely did. And what you're doing is you're ruining it for everybody else. So you're making yourself look troll-like. So you don't want to be like that, do you? You don't want to be like that. No. So, yeah, just pull it together, people. I'm not banning anybody. Just pull it together. Really important. Right. Let me go back to remember where you came from. Bonfire night, strong historic references. And I do have a lot of problems with fireworks, but that's a whole other story. But remember where you came from. We've been brainwashed. We've been dumbed down. We've been removed from our source. Our spirituality has been denied, only to be replaced by rigid rules masquerading as a type of pastoral care. The expression, remember where you come from, often means to remain humble, to remain grateful, to be true to your origins, values, and the people who helped you, regardless of your current success or social standing. But it means so much more to me than just that. It also means being in touch with yourself, because we live in a world that is absolutely intent on taking you away from who you are and what you're about. Okay, that's one of the things. And I think it's really important that we are able to hold on to who we are and ground ourselves in that. And there are key aspects of remembering where you came from. And one of them is a type of core value that you have about yourself, because the whole point about remembering where you come from, it really emphasizes the whole idea of staying connected to your fundamental principles, your cultural heritage, your personal identity, all of those things, and not selling out. In my profession, I am absolutely surrounded by people who sell out on a continual basis, people who might also have come from working class backgrounds, but by the time they get into the arenas that we are in, you know, national newspapers, international TV, they forget who they are. They forget where they've come from, but not me, because it's a huge part of who I am. And gratitude, and the gratitude of my journey from poverty to being able to speak to millions of people. I'm very grateful to be in that position, and to also be able to give other people a platform to do that as well. That is also really important. And so those things are important to me. We do have a lot of sellouts these days. We certainly do. So it's really important for me to always remember where I come from, to give thanks for my lineage. It wasn't fancy. My where I come from was not fancy. It wasn't about fame, but it was about strong working class people who built this land, alongside millions of other strong working class people. And statues are rarely built to commemorate strong working class people, the backbone of England and the UK. Most statues are of people with wealth and influence, but they are seldom the people who served our land, who mined our land, who farmed our land, who tended it, and who built it. But they should be. I never forget where I come from, because I see it as absolutely powerful. All these people made me. All of my ancestry made me who I am. A person who can sit here and say what I say, and can face off and deal with situations, and can laugh at people who oppose me, because I'm an adult and I'm mature. I know who I am. And it's a consequence of where I've come from. And that is powerful. Some people have tried to buy me off. People have tried to threaten me, to silence me. And even when people have grouped together to do that, they have still failed. And that is because I am my mother's daughter. But more than that, I am also my father's daughter, even though it took me longer to see, because I was so angry with him for much of my life. Both my parents were fiery. They were sassy. They were unafraid to speak their minds. My mum was born in April and under the astrological sign of Aries. My father was born in August and a Leo the lion, just like me. But I see beyond them, and I give thanks that I am the result of the struggles of my ancestors through war, famine, and poverty, that I have been blessed with platforms that allow me to speak my piece to millions, as I say, and that I can also in turn give a platform to other people who wouldn't necessarily get such a platform otherwise. I often think, what is my purpose here? And I'm no longer sure it can be simplified to one single thing. Maybe I have different purposes throughout my life. Maybe all of these different purposes will culminate in one big purpose, where it will become evident what my purpose is. But what I do know for me is standing up and being counted is probably the most common thread that runs throughout all of my purposes. It's the purpose that links all my purposes together, and that continues in my work, in my environment, and in all that matters. So remembering where we come from is absolutely vital. And I think I hate this kind of like this disengaging, this distancing that has been created, where they are trying to separate us from our source, from the strength, from everything that makes us who we are. I think if there's any fight on at all, it's to retain our individuality. I think that's a good thing. I really believe in individual differences, not to the point where we can't take care of other people, right? But I think it's really important to remember who you are, to not be caught up in one big kind of, homogenous whole. I am not the same as the next person, and the next person is not the same as me. And that is what makes it so brilliant, or our individuality. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. A light in the shadow. I appreciate that, Ray J. I really do. And, I love our chatters on here. I really do. And I'm very open to others as well. But you can tell when people are desperate and abusive, and they kind of have to be timed out because it ruins it for everybody. But for the most part, I withstand them. But thank you, you wonderful people. Most of the masses are completely oblivious to what's going on, sadly. And Yes, Humphrey, you too. I wish there were more like you as well. And we must remember that we have been programmed from birth. Right, Tarot Galaxy, you're absolutely right. And this is a key point, absolutely a key point, because sometimes people don't even realize they've been programmed because it goes so far back. It's so far. It's almost in our DNA because our parents were programmed as well. But we have absolutely been programmed from birth. Every day we are subject to hundreds of images and messages telling us that we are not good enough and that we need to improve in some way. Well, I would say that is simply about industry. That's all it is. It's simply about industry. It's about making lots of money. So I always adhere to I kind of stand by the idea that wherever I am, my ancestors are always with me. I feel them so strongly. I feel them around me right now. I think it's really important. It is. Cognitive dissonance, Kelly, is a hell of a thing. And we've been subject to it, haven't we? And thank you all for being here today. I really do appreciate it. Just to say, and please don't make any mention in the comments about this because I won't support anything on this, but I won't be here on Friday. I'm in the High Court on Thursday. More details in the legal link below. And then I'm taking a long weekend away thanks to a dear friend. So I just want to thank you all for being here today. Here are, of course, the wonderful credits from my wonderful Patreons. Thank you as ever. And I really do appreciate you all. And I even appreciate, well, actually, I really do appreciate people who challenge me, because it is through being challenged throughout my life that I've grown stronger. We're not learning and growing and strengthening necessarily from people who fully support us, although I absolutely appreciate you and could not do this without you. But where often I have found that I have grown the most is by being challenged by people. So I'm going to miss you too, Marlena. But, Del wants to know if there's a quote. Del, there is always a quote. Are you ready, my friend? Are you ready, my dear? Let's do it. A bush with strong roots stands better than a tree with weak ones. If you know where you are from, it will be harder for people to stop you where you are going. Thank you for being here, you wonderful people. I love you so much. And I will see you next Monday. Take good care of yourself. Lots of love to you all.